Here we go. Now, the first thing, as always, just to notice what's already happening, what's already here. And what usually prevents us from being able to notice, or fully accept, or be with what's already happening or already here are what I sometimes refer to as the 4 tendencies of the mind. The first tendency is looking for what to fix. So, as we begin to place our attention on what's already happening, we may notice the mind looking for what to fix about whatever we place our attention on. The second tendency of the mind you might call looking for what to change, which is similar to the first. Whatever we place our attention on, we may notice that tendency of the mind being activated, looking for what to change. And the third tendency of the mind is looking for what's wrong, even though we have the good intentions to make it right. Looking for what's wrong to make it right. Whenever we place our attention on, we may notice our thoughts looking for what's wrong to make it right. Then the fourth tendency of the mind we may notice as we place our attention on what's already here is not this, what's next? A kind of boredom or just general dissatisfaction with what's already here. So, let's begin to deliberately place our attention on parts of our self that we usually consider to be ourself. The first one is the body. So as we place our attention on the body, we may notice thoughts arise. We may notice one of the 4 tendencies of the mind. Looking for what to fix. We may have thoughts about how we don't like our weight, or our hair, or our clothes. But here, we're not looking to fix anything about our experience, but rather opening to becoming aware of what's already here, what the body's already doing. Similarly, as we keep our attention on our body, we may also notice the mind tendency of looking for what to change about the body. But here, we're not looking to change anything about the body. We're simply opening to or becoming aware of what the body's already doing, what's already happening. We may notice the third tendency of the mind, looking for what's wrong about the body, even though we may have the good intention to fix it or change it or make it right. But here, as we keep our attention grounded in the body, noticing that the body is before us, we notice we're not interested in looking for what's wrong with the body, but rather just opening to or becoming aware of what this body is already doing, what's already happening. And lastly, we may notice the fourth tendency of the mind being activated when we place our attention on the body, which is, this isn't interesting enough. What's next? But this too is just another tendency of the mind. But rather, we're interested in opening to or becoming aware of what the body is doing, just as it is. Now let's apply this framework to the next element of our experience that we usually consider to be ourself. The first one was the body. The second one will be emotions and sensation, but we'll just call it feeling. So as we place our attention on what we're feeling, we may notice the mind becoming activated, utilizing its long-stead patterns on whatever we place our attention on. In this case, feeling. So notice any tendencies, any thoughts about what we're feeling that may be related to looking for what to fix about the feeling. Because here, we're not interested in fixing any feeling. We're not interested in changing any feeling. We're not even interested in changing a negative feeling into a more positive feeling. We're not interested in knowing what's wrong with a feeling. That can be helpful sometimes, but fixing, changing, or looking for what's wrong to make it right or better is reserved for changing, fixing, and looking for what's wrong to make it right or better. Here, we're more interested in really knowing what's already happening, or what feeling is already doing. And lastly, we may notice ourselves becoming bored about what we're feeling. Our thoughts not interested in holding the attention on what we're feeling, thinking there must be something more interesting. But here we are interested in that. We're interested in staying with ourself, staying with our human, staying with the experience. What's already happening? What feeling is already doing? Now let's apply this framework to one last element of our experience that we usually consider to be our self. And that's our thinking. Just as we did with the body and feeling, we may notice when we place our attention on thought, it activating one of the tendencies of the mind, such as looking for what to fix about our thinking. But here, we're not interested in what to fix about thinking, but rather we're interested in seeing or being aware of thinking itself. Again, we're not interested in knowing about what to fix about thinking, but rather we're interested in the act of seeing or being aware of thinking itself. Noticing, being aware of thinking as a phenomenon rather than as content. Or to say that slightly differently, becoming aware of thinking as an object within space rather than the content the object can express. And as we place our attention on thinking, we may notice another tendency of the mind to become activated. As we place our attention on thinking, we may notice thoughts about what to change about thinking. But here, we're not interested in what to change. We're not even interested in changing a negative thought into a more positive thought. We're not interested in changing beliefs. We're not interested in changing our negative perceptions. But rather, we're interested in seeing or being aware of them when and if they should arise. And when and if they should pass away, then they pass away. But we don't attempt to make them pass away. when and if a thought arises, we simply become aware or open to what's already happening, what's already here. We just see it. Nothing can hurt awareness. Awareness is simply aware. We may also notice the third tendency of the mind to become activated when we place our attention on thought. We may notice our thoughts looking for what's wrong with our thinking. The common habit we may have of looking for what's wrong with our thinking. Even though we may have good intentions to do so in order to make it right, here we're not interested in understanding what's wrong. We're not interested in understanding anything. Here we're only interested in seeing or being aware of a thought, whether it's wrong or whether it's right. And lastly, we may notice a disinterest tendency of the mind. When we place our attention on thought, we may notice thought saying, what's next? This isn't interesting. This thought. But here, we are opening to or becoming aware of even uninteresting thoughts. Whatever thought is thinking. Now, after we've begun to no longer utilize the mind and its typical tendencies, and now after we've explored or became aware of each element of the body, each element of ourself, the body, emotions, and thought, and opened to and become aware of them just as they are, become aware of what's already happening. We can ask ourselves, if I can be aware of the body as an object, something I am aware of, how could I be that object? There must be something immediately prior that is being aware. Similarly, if I am aware of the feeling object, how could I be a feeling. There must be something immediately prior that is being aware of the feeling object. And lastly, if I am aware of the thought object, how could I be that thought object? There must be something immediately prior that is being aware of it. What is this awareness? What is this that is being aware? Notice its nature. What does it do? Can we say it does anything? What is its nature? This is who you are. Some people call this meditation. But this pure receptivity is you, yourself. Feel into that. Breathe into that. Know thyself. Let it permeate every part of your knowing, for it is your knowing. It is pure knowing, pure receptive knowing. Whatever pops in to this pure receptivity, you, awareness, will know it. If you hear a sound, you will know it. It'll linger in this space in the field of awareness. If you feel a sensation, you'll know it. It'll linger in the field of awareness. If you have a thought, you will know it. It'll linger in the field of awareness. It'll notice this aware field and how big it is compared to anything it might know, compared to any object. Notice how big this aware field is in comparison to any object it might know, compared to a sound, compared to a sensation, compared to a thought. This is you, infinite, eternal. Not existing in time or space, but yet time and space arise out of it. You are the field of awareness in which everything arises from. Notice how big you are in comparison to anything, any object you might know. If a thought pops in, notice how familiar that voice may seem. But also notice how small it is in comparison to what that thought arises within. The field of your awareness. from this space, you may see any of the problems that you were dealing with prior as being very small in comparison to who you are. You may notice any problems that you had earlier in the day being very small compared to who you are. Notice the thought or the image of the problem arising within the field of who you are as this aware space, this aware field in which everything known arises within. You are that field, the infinite, the eternal. Notice how small that problem is in comparison to who you are. Remembering yourself as this infinite field of knowing, infinite field of awareness. Begin to conclude any takeaway that you might want to make more conscious. Conclude any takeaway that you might want to bring back with you after our awareness meditation. What's the most important thing for you to know? You feel like you've sufficiently concluded what you need to know and your takeaway. Very slowly, when you're ready, very slowly, begin to bring your attention back to this moment. And when you feel sufficiently centered and ready to do so, take in a deep breath and open your eyes. What was your guys' experience? I'd love to hear any thoughts.